Anastasios Papakonstantinou. Cultural Olympic Games. 1. The proposal. Olympic Games constituted such an ancient Greece as nowadays the most important cultural event of the world. No other manifestation could approach luster and glamour of these games. However, this fighting spirit which governs the efforts of athletes occurs in another very important expression of human spirit, the artistic activity. An indisputable proof of this ascertainment constitutes the classical Greek antiquity. The most important Greek artists contested in the various Pan-Hellenic games, the victory and the award in the artistic arena. These games were Pythia, Isthmia, Nemea, and Panathenea. The competition and the fighting spirit are self-evident for those who have studied the history of these games. However, it has to be underlined that the majority of ancient musicians, painters, and poets competed for the award just as the athletes did. But what more important and ambitious, what most important obligation towards future generations would be if similar cultural games were organized with world feature? The main feature of such games would be the gathering of the most famous artists of our era. Musicians, painters, theater and cinema actors, poets from all the countries of the world could participate in such games by claiming gold, silver, and bronze medals. These games could have a great success and effect all over the world and to constitute the zenith of human spirit. Here, we have to underline that the determinant of these games from those in Isthma, Pythia, etc., is that in this new organization will not participate athletes, but only artists. Also, the difference of cultural Olympic Games from the artistic contests which were included in the program of Summer Olympic Games during the period 1912 to 1948 is that in the new organization will be no limit. That I to say, the works-off artists will not have to have as subject exclusively the sport, as it happened in the Olympic Games of 1912 to 1948. The subject of artists' work in the Cultural Olympic Games will be whatever could be a work of art. As regards with the authority or the international organization which will organize the Cultural Games, I think that the most competent is the International Olympic Committee in cooperation with UNESCO and the ministries of culture of various states which will participate to such games, and the other world cultural institutions. The games will take place every 4 years in a different city, every time, and will be chosen from the International Olympic Committee, IOC. The task of IOC will be the settlement of the problem for the length of final phase of these games. In my opinion, the period of 3 weeks is sufficient. Also, it is very important to determine the cultural contests which will be included in the program of Cultural Olympic Games. The contest will concern the principal kinds of art: music, dance, sculpture, painting, theater, cinema, and finally poetry. Specialists will decide on the partial contests which will be included in any form of art and the criteria with which the artist will be assessed and will be rewarded. Another important matter is the marking and the assessment of artists. I think that this duty could be undertaken from a jury, which will be composed from famous professors of fine arts, theater, and cinema critics, recognized musicians, as well as important cultural institutions and men of letters, authors, literateurs. In this way, will be assured the impartiality of critics and the realization of games will be in the best way. The possibility of realization of these games is proved from the fact that, already on the world, are organized important cultural events, musical cinema festivals mainly, which include award of winners. Finally, as concerns the starting date of first Cultural Olympic Games, I would say that it could be in 2017, as there will be necessary several years for the preparation of organizational frame of the Games. 2. Historical throwback. The organization of Cultural Olympic Games is characterized from some precursor phenomena, that is to say, some old efforts for substantial linkage of culture with Olympic spirit. The most important from these efforts were the various Pan-Hellenic games of antiquity, that means Pythia, Nemea, and the Panathenea, as well as the artistic contests which were officially introduced in the program of Athletic Olympic Games during the years 1912 to 1948. Below, you will find a first reference to Pan-Hellenic Games and then to the contests of Olympic Games of the period 1912 to 1948. The most basic differences between these games and the new organization have been already mentioned. The Panhellenic Games. The Pythia. The most important games of the antiquity after the Olympic Games were Pythia, which took place every 4 years in Delphi, with difference of 2 years from the Olympic Games. Delphi, the umbilicus of the earth for ancient Greeks, constituted a place of worship for god Apollo, who, according to mythos, he had arrived there in order to establish his oracle. In Delphi, the god found the ideal place, but also a objective difficulty, the existence of a huge snake python who impeded his plans. God gave a solution to this problem by killing Python, and he established games, Pythia, in memory of this event. The first games were musical, and they took place every 8 years. Posteriorly, there were added athletic games, race, channel fight, boxing, pancratium, and it was reduced the period of realization of these games from 8 to 4 years. In any case, the artistic and Pythia were considered from the total of the Greek world more important to the respective athletic ones. The artistic games themselves in Pythia included musical contests, and more concretely song and arpa, as well as dramatic games and recitation contests. The winners were awarded a crown composed from laurel branches. The Nemea. The Nemea took place every 2 years in Nemea. Although it was an important feast in which participated many athletes and artists, information from ancient sources is not enough for giving us a complete image for their realization. Of course, we know the tradition for their establishment from the mythic hero Hercules, as sign of thanking to Zeus after his feat in Nemea, that is to say, the killing of a lion. The official commencement of these games took place in 573 BC. Except the athletic contests, there were musical contests as well as theatrical games. The prize of games was 1 crown from wild celery. The Isthmia. The Isthmia took place every 2 years in the sanctum of Poseidon in Isthmia. These games were dedicated to the honor of the god. The starting date of these games was 582 BC. Very soon, these games became Panhellenic. To this fact contributed the ideal geographical position of Isthmia, as well as their perfect organization from Corinthians. Moreover, after some time, these games successfully competed with Pythia, and they attracted a great number of spectators. The competition's program was similar to that of Olympic Games as regards with athletic part. However, the difference was in Isthmia took place also artistic games. More concretely, took place musical and poetic games, recitation games, as well as painting games. The award of winners was initially a crown from pine branch, which later was replaced from wild celery crown. The Panathenea. The Panathenea was the greater feast of ancient Athens. Thes games were established from Theseus in honor of Polyada Athena. The Panathenea were distinguished in minor and major. The minor took place every year, as the major took place every 4 years. Within Panathenian games took place artistic games and recitation games. The program of artistic games included musical and theater games, as well as dance games. B. The Art Olympic Games. Baron Pierre de Coubertin, the reviver of Olympic Games, made efforts in order to connect Olympic Games with culture. Consequently, in 1906 at the Conference of Paris, he suggested the establishment of 5 contests: architecture, sculpture, painting, music, and literature, which aimed to prize, every 4 years, original works inspired from the athletic idea. These efforts had as result the official introduction from 1912 to 1948 of artistic pentathlon in the program of Olympic game. However, the moderate quality of exhibits as well as the indifference of public lead to the suppression of these contests after 1948. London, Olympic Games, 1948, was the place where the last pure artistic contests took place. In these contests participated 27 countries. 3. The philosophical background of the organization. 2. Are the basic components which constitute the philosophical foundation of the cultural Olympic Games: the ideology of Olympism and the philosophy of humanism. Olympism is, according to Olympic statutory chart, a life philosophy, which promotes and combines, in a harmonic totality, the virtues of body and soul, and aims to the formation of a better entity. Besides, Olympism tries to shape the individual by combining the principles of Greek culture with Christian ethos, but at the same time aims to constitute a communication vehicle of understanding and peace amongst the nations. Also, Olympism aims at the suppression of all racial, political, religious, and social discriminations. Finally, Olympism is distinguished from some values as the principle of body and spiritual harmony and of fair play, which rejects the illicit conquest of victory and the unjustified conquest of advantages in the games. Exactly, these values are the credo of the Cultural Olympic Games. The second philosophical system, which constitutes the philosophical background of the Cultural Olympic Games, is the philosophy of humanism, believing that only the education and spiritual culture of individual can lead to the progress of humanity. Humanism, through the return to classical models, aims at the symmetrical development of human soul and the establishment of personality at the most superior level. Also, humanism aims at the human ideal of beauty by following the road traced from classical art and tries to form a common cultural conscience for mankind. 4. The legal frame. The legal frame of Olympic Games cannot be different from the frame which governs the athletic Olympic Games. So, the legal foundation of these games will be the international law in its various versions. Consequently, the organization will be governed from the basic rules of the Statute of United Nations, as parallel sources of law will be the international practice and the general principles of international law. It is self-evident that if, finally, the IOC undertakes the responsibility for organizing these games, it will be governed from the rules of the IOC. Besides, as the IOC undertakes the difficult task for organizing the Cultural Olympic Games, the choice of the organizing city of games will be in accordance with the provisions governing the choice of cities which organize the Winter and Summer Olympic Games. These rules will be identical in the new organization. Finally, we have to mention that in the complementary legal frame of Cultural Olympic Games will be the rules of copyright, and more specifically the International Convention for the Protection of Authors. We do not exclude, if it is accepted, the demand for the realization of such games to decide the establishment of an international commission of jurists in order to elaborate a new draft of International Convention on matters concerning the new organization. This will be necessary. This convention will give complementary protection to authors who will participate to the Cultural Olympic Games. The realization of games. The preliminaries. The realization of preliminaries games becomes necessary due to the probability of numerous participation of artists to these games. Artists who will not be able to participate in the final phase of the games, which will last for about 20 days. Apart from that, one of the reasons of failure of artistic contests of Olympic Games during the period 1912 to 1948 was the great number of participants. The realization of preliminary games will be the work which will be undertaken from the International Olympic Committee and UNESCO. If these institutions will accept the responsibility of realization of such games, the preliminary games will include 2 phases, because it is very important to participate to the final phase of the games. Less artists. By this way, the interest of spectators will be big, and we will assure the success of games. The first phase of preliminary will include games for choosing artists. Pre-continent. For instance, if from 10 European countries there is participation of 40 artists for each contest through first preliminaries, which will be held at a place chosen from UNESCO, and which will not be, obligatorily, the country which will organize. The games will be chosen the 5 best ones. Totally from each continent will be chosen from the preliminary 5 artists, so the total number of participants in the main preliminary must be 25. They will have the right of participation to the main preliminary, which will have to be held in the country which organizes these games. The main preliminary will be held all over territory of this country and all year around games year. The total number of artists who will be qualified to the final will be 8. No contest of Cultural Olympic Games will not include more than 8 participants. The aim of the preliminary procedure is to bring to the games the most well-prepared and skillful artists who will be able to win the world admiration by their victory. B. Opening and termination ceremony. Oath of athletes. As regards with the ritual of cultural Olympic Games, they will have all features of athletic games. The light of Olympic flame will be, with a similar way as the Summer and Winter Olympic Games, as the Olympic anthem and the other ritual elements, such of the opening as those of the termination of the Games, will be the same. Regarding the artist's oath, it is useful to have a small addendum. As we know, the institution of the athlete's oath in the ritual of the modern Olympic Games constitutes inspiration of Coubertin and aims to the achievement of normal realization of games as to the maintenance of the values of Olympism. However, in case of cultural games, the absolutely not measurable value of artistic works in comparison with contests where the performance of athletes has objective value, and usually there is no doubt, and the different way of expression and the diversified technique that some artists may use make necessary to add to the Olympic oath, and especially for the cultural Olympic Games, the sentence that the artist will never doubt the decision of judges dash. If we don't make this addendum, they will appear inadmissible. Phenomena during these games, which could mine the whole effort. The imposition of discipline at these games will be achieved by this way. See Judges' Competition Provisions, Awarding of Prizes. The choice of judges and of the jury of games will be work the UNESCO, which may propose individuals with great prestige from the cultural field. The training of judges will last 4 months, and it will include their familiarization with the spirit of games, the learning of fighting provisions, and of their duties. The training task of judges will be undertaken from the IOC and UNESCO. The main competing provisions will be the object of elaboration of a jury which will be established jointly from UNESCO or any other authority that will undertake, finally, the responsibility for the realization of games. The winners of games will be awarded golden, silver, and bronze medals, as it would be good if there was greater distinction for the golden Olympic champion. More concretely, he will be awarded with a golden crown, which will symbolize glory that this concrete artist offered to his country and his cultural predominance. 6. The contests of cultural Olympic Games. One more very important subject is the choice of cultural contests, which will finally take place. A competent authority for the final choice will be the UNESCO. Following a relative introduction of the UNESCO will also decide if there will be any addition or removal of contests in future organizations. The general guiding principle I suggest is to have contests only for the most important branches of art: painting, sculpture, theater, cinema, music, dance, and finally, poetry. Architecture, although it was included in TH program of contests during the period 1912 to 1948, in my opinion, has not to be included in the games because it is out of the wider thought of this organization. It is useful here to note that it is necessary to be chosen a few contests for each art in order to keep high the interest of spectators and in order to avoid the risk of degeneration of the whole organization. For these contests, it has to be noted that the artists will not create their works during the games, but they will have made them before, as it is self-evident. It will be mainly valid for the works of visual arts, of the cinema, of the poetry. As for the works where there will be live performance, the artist will receive a mark during the contest. Also, has to be underlined that it is prohibited to the artist to participate with different works in the preliminary and in the final contests. As regards the partial contests, my proposal for each art is as follows. Painting. 1. Best Picture. 2. Oil painting. 3. Aquarelle. 4. Applied graphic arts. Note: the first contest is the most important out of the 5 ones. In this contest, the painters can show their work from any style and with any subject. It is a necessary condition for awarding of a prize to have an original work, that is to say, we exclude replicas, even if they are perfect. Sculpture. The contests I suggest for sculpture are: 1. The best sculpture. 2. The best relief. 3. Exhibition of sculptures with common subject. Note: for the last contest, I have to note that it will include an exhibition of sculptures with a common subject. This subject may be whatever. Also, it is not important the number of sculptures that the Exhibition will include. The sculptor will receive a mark for the total works that will constitute the exhibition. Theater. The contests I suggest are the following. 1. The best piece of theater. 2. The best original piece of theater. 3. The best interpretation for men. 4. The best interpretation for women. 5. The best direction. Cinema. The best film. The best direction. The best scenarion. The 1st role for men. The 1st role for women. The best photography. Music. Organic music. Chamber music. Symphonic music. Best song. Opera. Dance. The best dance. Ballet. Folklore dance. Poetry. The best poem. The best collection of poems. The best ode. These could be, if approved, the contests which could be included in the finals. However, in any case, the final word will be taken from the special commissions which will be established from the authority, which finally undertake the responsibility for the games. Organization. 6. Epilogue. At the end, it is useful to mention the benefits for the organizing country of these games. The example of athletic Olympic Games make us conclude that these benefits, such economic as political, will be huge. The necessary works that will be for the games. Indicatively, I mentioned the transport networks, the technical infrastructures, the building facilities will contribute to the development of the country which will organize the games and an increase of tourists. Besides, the proceeds from TV rights, as I expect the cultural Olympic Games may exceed, in terms of spectators, the athletic games, but also the proceeds from the spectators who will visit the organizing city will be equally important. We have to take into consideration that also the political benefits for the organizing country, which will be honored with the organization of these cultural Olympic Games, will be the center of world interest and, in this way, would show its history and its culture with the best way. In addition, the organization of these games will contribute to the reinforcement of the national prestige of the country and will facilitate the development of the international cooperation and approach of this country with other states. But also, the benefits for the culture itself will be numerous and important. The realization of these games will motivate the interest of young people for the culture and will make them deal with the arts. The same will happen also for the adults, as contrary to athletic games, there will be numerous participation of skillful artists who will be 35 to 60 years old. This is one basic difference of these games from the athletic ones where mainly young people participate. Also, it will be a great inflorescence of arts on world level, and we don't exclude that countries with small tradition in the field of culture will show very important cultural achievements. Finally, it has to be noted that the huge and rapid development of technology is in position to eliminate any technical problems which may arise during the realization of the games, in contrary to what had happened in the past. For all these reasons, I am convinced that these games could be realized after 2015.